Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Garage Biljon and my 94 Safari build. We are continuing on part 3 of the rear suspension rebuild, and you are seeing my torsion tube hanging here. It's received a lick of paint. It's by no means perfect, but the rust is now neutralized, and it's got a coating of Brunox epoxy primer, and it's got a coating of black satin. So I'm going to let this dry. It's a bit of a rainy day, so it's taking a while. But while we're doing that, let's go inside and see where we are at with the suspension. Alright, so I've got a bunch of the stuff on the bench here. You can see this has already been cleaned up. All that silver paint is gone, and I've given this a coating of the Brunox primer. The reason I did that is because after I cleaned the paint off, this was just pure raw aluminium, which I know is okay, but under the car and maybe driving on bad salty roads, I want to make sure this aluminium is protected, so I painted it with the epoxy coating. I've got the bushes out already. This was fairly easy. I just pushed them out using my vise on the bench there and a couple of big sockets, so that was not a big job at all. What are we going to be doing in this episode is I'm going to be taking out these guys, which has a special trick which I'll show you, and I'm also giving up on these torsion bars. Thank you for all of your advice in the comments, but this is impossible to get loose. They are so badly corroded. And I know it doesn't look like that on the film, but if you could see inside this, it's just one cake of rust. And let me just flip this over for you, and you can see here I drilled a hole into this end cap, and I've been beating on this with a drift and a hammer, a 5-pound hammer, the one lying over there. This is not going anywhere. It's solidly rusted to this spring plate. So obviously this is an issue, right? I can't put this back into the car. I know some of you probably would say just put it back and forget about it. That goes against my grain. It's not the way I am. So I need to solve this problem. And I think the best way for me to do this is to source new spring plates. And then I'm not going to buy new torsion bars. That's just insane. €1,000 is not happening on this car. So I've ordered new spring plates, and I've called one of the breakers that are close to me. They actually had a good set of torsion bars on their shelf, and as you can see, I've already got them. I went and picked up this from one part supplier who has them brand new, and I went and picked this up from the breaker who has a pair of 944 bars, which is exactly the same diameter, 23.5. So with a bit of luck, I'll get this done within the next week or two, and we'll get the car back on its wheels. I need to do a couple of details still on the car, and then I'll take it again for a roadworthiness test. Well, that is my current goal, getting it to roadworthiness before the end of January, because that leaves me 2 months worth of road testing before we take that trip to the Northern Cape in Norway. So sit back, relax, and let's start working. Alright, so the workshop's a little bit cleaner, so let's get going on removing this bushing. I'm going to heat this up, and then I should be able to lever the metal insert out of the rubber, and the same goes for that side. And then if I'm lucky, the rubber comes with it. If not, then I need to then push out the rubber with a socket or something like that. But let's get going on this. That didn't quite go according to plan. I was expecting to pry it off, and it actually just popped itself off and fell on the floor and set fire to my floor and melted into the floor there. So maybe I heated it too long, but anyway, it's off. So let's do the other side. Alright, so the reason we heat these guys up is because the metal ring is vulcanized into this rubber, and there's no way for you to push the rubber out, right, while the metal ring is in there. So that's why we heat it up, to break that bond, and then we can pull the ring off. And looks like on both of these, the inside rubber came out with a ring, whereas the outside rubbers tend to stay behind with the ring coming off. So what I'm using is just two sockets stacked into one another. You can see it's a 23 and a, looks like a 15. They fit into one another, and then I just shove it into the back here, and then I try to get a bite on the vise and on the socket, and then we just start gently pushing it out. As you can see, it's coming already. This is not taking any real force, so be gentle. You don't want to bend or break anything. And there we go, she's out. Alright, so I need to take off the dust cover, and the reason I'm doing this is because if I want to paint this, I want to do it properly, and that means I need to be able to get into all these areas. So I'm going to disassemble the hub, and then I'm going to put back this plate, and then I'm just going to cover it up with tape or shove a rag in there. I'll see how I end up doing it, but it's something I need to do in order to properly paint this swing arm. Alright, so this has been drying now for a couple of days. You can see the torsion tube in the back there. It must have been about 5 days ago that I painted that guy up, and I've got all the parts now needed to rebuild the rear suspension. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear out this workbench, and then we'll start with the torsion tube and get the new torsion bars set up correctly together with their spring plates. When you get spring plates, make sure that you have the right side on the right side. So the writing here has to be at the bottom, and then you know it's the right side. If you look at the left-hand side, you can see it's exactly a mirror, again with the writing at the bottom. So when you put this onto your torsion tube, it needs to be like this, with the writing at the bottom. And the same goes for the torsion bars. There's a left and there's a right. And if you look closely here, you can see that's the R over there. That tells you this is the right hand side torsion bar. So the next thing we need to do is we need to grease up the splines with just all-purpose grease. Just make sure that the splines have a good coating of grease. Don't do too much, but make sure that it's covering the whole end of the torsion bar where there is no paint, because this is why they rust solid to the tube. So I've got the splines now greased up, so now we just have to slide them in gently, and then I should be able to find the hole, and that's the hole right there. Right, there we go. Getting to how much angle I need to add to these spring plates, this has occupied my mind for the best part of 2 weeks. I think I have an answer, but I'll take you through how I got to my answer, so follow me. First step is to measure the thickness of my lift kit at the front. I bought these as a 2-inch lift kit, but 2 inches is 5 centimeters and I think 8 millimeters. I know for a fact this is not 5 centimeters high, so I just want to double check the height on this. And the first thing I'm going to do that is I'm going to first measure the thickness of this plate, and then I'm going to put the vernier against this and push up to the top, and that then will give me a measurement, and then I'll just subtract the thickness of the plate from the measurement I get here, and then allow for 1 or 2 millimeters worth of gasket sitting underneath the body, and that should give me the measurement I need for the angle at the back. So let me just quickly switch the guy on and zero it, which it is now, and then we'll measure the thickness of this plate, and we are at 7 millimeters is good enough for me. We're not going to be super perfect on this. And then let's hop it around, zero it in again, and then we are going to measure this area here right next to it like that. Okay, and we are reading 48,2. So we know that this plate was 7. I need to compensate for about 1 or 2 millimeters up top there, which means this guy is 4 centimeters. That's what I'm going to work with, 4 centimeters. The rest of the marginal stuff we can adjust on the spring plate itself. So I'm going to work with a 4 centimeter lift, not a 5 centimeter lift as I initially thought. Now that we know this, we can go work out the angles. So now we need to do a whole bunch of math. First of all, I've got the torsion tube sitting flat on its bottom edge. Which means that guy there is not level. That's actually slanted at 15 degrees, which means I'm going to be working with the second measurement I took. And that second measurement said that these spring arms were hanging at 5 degrees incline. However, that 5 degrees incline was incorrect. My measurement was correct, but the setting was incorrect. So if we go back to when I had this guy level, we measured 21 degrees worth of incline, and that is 2 degrees more than it should have had for the 23.5-inch torsion bar. If I had a 22-inch torsion bar, I should have been at 23 degrees. We are replacing the torsion bars with the same spec, which means 23.5, which means I need to be at 19 degrees of angle. So that 5 degrees I measured was too much. It needs to come back by 2 degrees, which means I'm going to start off at 3 degrees. So that is my base measurement I'm going to start with. And now I need to figure out how many degrees I need to add in order for me to create the 4 centimeter lift I need at the back. So let's quickly have a look at what the Haynes manual says. It has specs here for the 23.5 and the 22 millimeter torsion bars. And what it says is that for every change in inclination of the spring plate of 1 degree, you'll get an approximately 5 millimeter change in car height for the 23.5. We know we want to lift the car by 4 centimeters. So 4 centimeters divided by 5 millimeters is 8. So if I add 8 degrees to the 3 degree starting point on this guy, I will get to 11 degrees, and then I should get the 4 centimeter lift that I need. We will get to the 11 degrees angle by a combination of jumping by 1 teeth on the inside of the torsion bar and jumping by a teeth on the outside of the torsion bar. The inside will give me 9 degrees and the outside will give me 8 degrees and 10 minutes. So you can make a fairly small adjustment in angle. So I'm just going to add some grease to the splines here. I'll slide the spring plate on, and that'll be where I start, and then I'll go backwards and forwards on the teeth until I get the 11 degrees that I need. Alright, so you can see I'm now sitting at 11.3 degrees angle. I'm very close to where I need to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn one more spline on the inside and one spline back on the outside, and that should give me 50 minutes, which is roughly what's going to get me spot on with 11 degrees. So let me quickly do that and then we should be good. Alright, so I've now moved the inner splines one this way and I've moved the outer splines one this way, which brings me to 10.5, and I'm happy with that number. I can still do minor adjustments here. As you can see, there's a bolt in here that's eccentric, and I can drop and lift the spring plate more if I need, and that'll more than compensate for the half a degree I can't create using the torsion bars themselves. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be greasing this up with the same grease I used for the Powerflex bushings. Do not use general purpose grease on this because it will actually attack the rubber and soften it. So I'm using the silicone based grease and that'll not attack the rubber. So I'm going to put that on now and then I'm going to push it in, and then we are going to bring on the end plate, and then this side of the torsion tube is complete. Right, so you can see I've now got the rubber lubed up with the moly coat, and I've got this bracket on, and the inside of this bracket is lubricated, so is the torsion tube. But because these are new rubbers, they are quite tough to get the brackets and everything to seat properly. And I can't use the bolts that I will be using in here to pull that in because it doesn't even reach the other side. So what I've done is I've taken the brace, the 4 bolts that holds this brace to the car. This is the brace that sits right behind the torsion tube. I've taken those bolts, which are quite a bit longer if you have a look at them side by side. There's quite a difference there, but these bolts actually does make it all the way to this side. So I'm going to bolt all four of these bolts in, and then I'm going to pull the rubber in, and I think once I'm out of thread I'll be swapping over to those, and then I'll pull it the rest of the way in. Right, so this side is now complete. I've got the bracket all the way snugged up to the torsion tube. My trick with the longer bolts worked. It's not torqued up yet because I still need to release this bottom bolt again once it's on the car. But for now we are good, and I'm quickly going to do the other side. Alright, so this side is on as well, and let me just show you, I've got 0 degrees showing on my level over here, and if I come to this side I should see 25 or 26, and I'm seeing 25,2, which is good, and I am seeing on this side 25,1 as well. So they are perfectly level now. This is about 1 degree less than I was aiming for in total, but I can adjust if I need more height on that side there. So I think this is going to give me a minimum of 3 centimeter lift at the back, and then I can play with it if I need to, but I'm happy with this. So I'm going to dive under the car now, take off the old mounts, clean out the areas there, and also treat rust that I can see. Alright, so I've taken a couple of hours just to look through the whole underside of the car where the torsion tube is sat, because you normally can't see that area because it's so covered by all the hardware. So I've cleaned it up. It's not perfectly clean, but at least most of the dirt is gone. And I have found 1 or 2 spots where I wasn't too happy with the surface rust. So you can see this is where one of those braces sits. So I've just treated that with the Brunox epoxy primer, which will neutralize that rust and encapsulate it. It's not bad, but I don't want that to continue rusting, especially seeing what we're going to be doing with this car. I found a little bit of surface rust down there as well, but for most part it's actually a very nice, clean, good car still. No surprises, no holes, no Swiss cheese, nothing like that. It's all good. So I've also, if you have a look here, I've taken off the drive shafts, and the reason for that is because the outer CV joints had a bit of play in them, and I wanted to rebuild it, so I took it off, and then when I got to that side, the grease in there was completely hardened out. So the joints are okay, but there is some grazing on them, so I'm going to replace them as well. But what we're going to be doing now is to replace the two bushings on this side and on that side, and then once that's done, we are ready to bring the torsion tube back under the car in its position. Right, so as you can see, I'm struggling to get these inserts to go through the rubber and not push out the rubber on the other side, and it's even fighting me to go all the way through on the longer rubber here. So what I've done is I've put these into the freezer for about an hour and a half, so they are now ice cold. Hopefully they are a little bit smaller and that they'll go in simpler now. I'm going to try that. If that doesn't work, I don't quite know how I'm going to do this. So let's see if we can get it in now with them being frozen. That worked really well. So we've got both sides in now. This one is in as well. So let's get this under the car and back in its position. Alright, so now I've got the torsion tube hanging in its spot with these two bolts on that side as well pushed through, so I can drop my lift and then we can start putting in the aftermarket braces I got from Partworks. Right, so we've got the bolt through there torqued up to 51 pound-feet of torque. I've got all of these bolts installed. All of this is now done, and the same goes for the other side. So the next job for me to do is bring in the swing axles and then start building up the brakes again, but I'm running out of time, so this is where I'm leaving you for this episode. I know this has been a long one. Hopefully the next one will be a bit shorter. So if you like these kinds of videos and you like my 924 Safari build, please remember to subscribe. And thank you again for everyone who leaves me feedback on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. I really do appreciate your help. That has helped me with a lot of things that I was struggling with. We're almost there. We're on the home stretch. So until next time, goodbye.